We all are gonna die. 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 Why don't we help each other prepare for it? Without death there could not be life. I'm talking about end of life conversations, conversations about the end of life. Death and dying, grief and loss, conversations about the end of life.
Every moment is a death. Each
There you
moment
go.
dies,
Each breath, yeah.
and each breath. And who I was when I woke up this morning is not who I am right now. That in some ways that person is dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think on the other side of that, what has lasted from those shoes is the deep sense of animacy of life.
Welcome to this episode of End of Life Conversations. I'm Reverend Wakil David Matthews.
And I'm the Reverend Mother Ana Luisa Armendariz. In this podcast, we share people's experiences with death and dying, grief and loss, and the end of life.
We really enjoy all of our excellent and insightful guests. They generously tell their stories with compassion and wisdom. We also want to thank Wakil and Wendy's children and partners for that wonderful introductory song. Okay, let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Today we are delighted to speak with Sam Zemke. Sam's a part of our podcast family. He does terrific work as our editor. So glad to be able to talk to him today. He's a jack of many trades and interests. He's a radical anthropologist, a neo-mythologist, a cooperative living counselor, a mediator, artist, musician, improviser, ancestral advocate, part-time house spirit, and service magician. I want to hear more about those. He's also a dear friend of mine on the Sufi path who I've known since he was a little rascal running around Sufi camp.
Oh, so sweet. Sam has been walking a lifelong journey with a trickster and has a great affinity for the liminal parts of life. Transformation and boundary tending have revealed themselves to be the key facets of the work Sam has been called to do, and they endeavor to honor that call to the best of their ability. Wow. I'm so excited to get to know you, Sam.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay.
I'm so glad you could do this with us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we always start, very well, because you're our editor. We like to, it kind of helps us get to know folks. It's like, tell us more about when you first were aware of death in your life.
Yeah, there's two that I've been thinking of preparing for our interview today. First, I think most of my work with death has been less literal and more symbolic, energetic death of time periods in people's lives, things like that. So the first awareness was when I was 3 or 4 years old. I had a favorite pair of shoes. They were slip-on shoes with radical iguanas on them. It was the 90s. And I could not let them go. I wore them until they were absolutely falling apart. And my mom said, you can't wear them anymore. They're done. And so we created a ritual and built a ceremonial fire and put the shoes in the fire and burned them up. And so that's my very first memory of something that I loved and was struggling to let go of, dying.
Yeah.
The second was when I was maybe 8 or 9. We had a great friend of ours, Sufi friend, who had cancer and either had decided or it had been determined that it was like pretty terminal. And so he wasn't going through the chemo, stuff like that. So it was end of life stuff. And he came to live with us. And so he was in our house for the last maybe 3 or 4 months of his life. And so I watched that process.
Yeah.
And I think my parents tried to hide him on the day that he passed, but it didn't work because I have a pretty Your memory of walking in the room to say good morning and everybody was gathered and he was no longer in his body.
That's fascinating. Yeah. I mean, your mom and I are very dear friends, and I can really imagine her being the kind of person to create ritual and to take care of somebody like that. So yeah, that's wow. What an incredible. I'd like to, if I can, just ask more about how that felt to you as a child as you walked in, and what was your reaction to that?
Yeah, of course. It's hard to access where I was as a
Sure.
child. I'm here now, and so most of it is retrospect. But I don't remember great distress.
Okay.
Strange, odd. And looking back, I think certainly the wanness, the sort of emaciation was visually striking. But that had been such a long process of wasting that it was just sort of the punctuation moment on that.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But growing up in rural Montana and hunting and fishing and being part of like outdoor programs and learning to like butcher and process our own food, the process of life and death, I don't think even then was super far away.
Yeah. Part of life. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to say, so there's that whole process, the cycle of life that you had with your animal husbandry, right? But what I want to go back to, because I have lived with the exact same kind of kiddo. I think my daughter and you have a similar attachment to your favorite XYZ. She literally has had shoes that her toes were sticking out and she refused. She flat out refused to let him go.
Right.
We still have a few blouses that she wore day in, day out for a couple of years. And it's just like it's like a stained glass at this point because it's so see-through, but she still has them and the only reason she has had to stop wearing them is because they're literally in tatters. And what I appreciate about that, and when you said that you've witnessed like the death of time, I think that is a really interesting component because you as a child have watched the life and the demise of your favorite loved clothing, the rise and demise of your friend living in your home. You watch not just like the abrupt cycle of life, here's our food and here's the a death, but you've watched the flow of that end, which I think is really different because I think people can get that moment of punctuation of this is death, but you actually were in the Tao with the death, right? Like just like rolling through the ending. And I've never thought about that. And I think that is an incredibly astute way of almost slows time down because people are like, he was suddenly gone, right? And for you, it's like, I watched the emaciation process.
Right.
I watched my shoe
dissolve.
And, dissolve. And I think that is like, it feels like such a beautiful and connective, like it's almost like a connective tissue for life. Like to be able to be aware of that. So, wow, that is really cool. You're the first one who's ever said this. So you've just opened up a portal into my death world.
I love that.
Yeah, that's so good. And it's so important to realize that there's so many little deaths. In fact, the poem you're going to read later or that we'll read anyway.
Yeah.
Speaks to that. So I really think that's an important part of our learning here. And speaking about end of life is that ends of life happen in so many ways. So, yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I mean, every moment is a death. Each moment dies and each breath. And who I was when I woke up this morning is not who I am right now. That in some ways that person is dead.
Yeah.
And I think on the other side of that, what has lasted from those shoes is the deep sense of animacy of life. I remember in college learning about animistic spiritual forms. They talked about the difference between animism, which is the belief that everything has a spirit, and animacy, which is the inherent life of the thing independent of our belief. And so each pair of shoes, because it goes on a journey, any differentiated piece is alive, has a spirit to it.
Yeah.
The cardboard box that the shoes come in does. And it's an item and it comes to you as this being, And then the shoes become a life, and then the box becomes life, and it goes on its own journey. The chicken bone, the chicken is a chicken, and then as you piece it all apart, it becomes different things going on different journeys.
Yes.
And as you create
Yes.
things and put things together in like a sculpture or an art project, all of those disparate pieces come together to form a new life, and that goes on its own journey until it breaks apart.
Yeah.
Sam, I am so delighted by you. I'm like, I want Wakil to tuck you in his pocket and bring you along so we could spend long hours just like sharing, because I really like you're like my kin. I can totally sense this. Two things though. I had to like, this is another thing too, but when sometimes I talk to my truck and I literally, like, her name is Athena, but when I'm thinking about her and, she's had some car issues this last year and, we've been taking care of her little problems, but I think about like the oil that came up that is in her. I think about all the metal and how it was made. And I sit there and I'm driving and I'm like talking to her all about parts of her. and being like, babe, like, I need you to like tell me what's going on so that I can help you. So I have this I have this relationship with my things, which I don't like that word, but things, and tell them like, I remember when you were just a tree, or I remember when you were cotton in the fields, which leads me to, I started writing a story like 2 months ago that I'm still poking away. And it's about the bleeding of a tree that gives out latex in order to become a bed. And the bed has sentience. So stay tuned.
And it remembers being a part of that tree on some level.
Yes.
Yeah.
It remembers the thermal airs and the heat when it's like sitting in this warehouse, like, what am I doing? Like, what? But yeah, I've been working on the story, but I really appreciate that. And, it reminds me back to this whole concept of recognizing that deaths are every moment, every day, the you who woke up this morning is no longer the you who's sitting with us, right? Like, and I wonder if that sensation is really important for more and more people to understand, so that the whole concept of this end of life is not so different from the end of this morning, and the end of breakfast, and the end of my nails, right? Like, it's all really interconnected.
Yeah, so much. I really appreciate that too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If we recognize that everything's vibrating, that gives that. I was just reading something the other day that there's nothing that isn't filled with these live cells or these bits of stardust, that have created what we all live around. So yeah, there's living and dying in every moment. Yeah. Thank you, Sam. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that too, that the difference in affinity, right? Because just because every moment is a death doesn't mean that some moments don't matter more to us because we spend time with them. I think the death of your breakfast in the morning as it goes into your belly, you haven't spent that long with that breakfast. And if it's a really good breakfast, you might mourn the end of that breakfast. But
or breakfast with friends who have a different kind of feeling, right?
Yeah.
Right. And we appreciate that in a different way. But like the death of a relationship that you've spent a long time with hurts in a different way because you've woven so many more threads between you and that other person, or you and that moment, or those shoes that you love that you have to throw into the fire. They've been with you on so many walks, on so many journeys together.
That
Adventures. It hurts when it goes away. And when you don't get to walk with that anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So let's start again with the shoes, though. Can you tell me about the ritual that your mom had you do? And like, what did it feel like to you going through that as a kiddo?
Yeah, I love that you're doing ritual at that age.
Yeah. I mostly remember the fire. It was a special fire in our little fire pit specifically for that. And we spent the time to sit with the gratitude for what they were and the loss of not having them anymore, not being in that anymore. But I was, that's a pretty foundational, formational memory. And so it's those big hits of like, okay, we're going to sit and we're just going to be present with this. And we're going to acknowledge the importance that these hold. And then with the support of the ritual of the ceremony, we're going to let it go and let it move on into memory or into its next phase, and let these shows
Yeah.
become what they're going to do on their next journey.
And also offering them back up to Mother Earth, right, in some form, because essentially they came from her, and now they're returning to her.
Now they're returning.
Right.
We don't have to talk about rubber and the ecological impacts of
I was
birds.
going to say
know.
that.
But
I did have that thought too, but I was like,
we don't have to go down that road.
Yeah,
but
my head
it's
was going to
transmuted.
microplastics. My head was
Yes.
going to microplastics. Yeah.
Of course we both did, but you know what?
Yeah.
It's transmuted by our gratitude. Like we
Right.
have to like metabolize what we know now, but it's still a loss.
That's
It's so
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
how
Sam,
much fun.
how has this death story, is this foundational experience, impacted the story of your life?
What ways hasn't it impacted my life?
That
Right.
might be right. Yeah.
I mean, that's the right answer for sure.
Right. Like part of that realization of what my guiding archetype is in certain language around trickster, and that liminal place, that transformational place, seeing the importance in those transformative moments is a through line from start to finish. Most of my deep, intimate partnerships have happened in transitional moments in my life or in theirs. And as I walk more intentionally into that, I find myself showing up in places at turning points. And for better, maybe for better or worse. We don't have, I don't know. I don't,
No judgment. No judgment.
And I don't have the grand perspective of,
right.
Determining what's good or bad. Sometimes it's harder than others.
Yeah.
But I have worked in one of my great passions is communal living. For 10 years, I was convinced that the only way we were going to be able to like live together and overcome this hyper individuated world that we have found ourselves in was to all live on communes and live in intentional communities. And I tried to build them. I tried to work with them for a long time. Through some large transformations in my life over the last couple of years, I ended up living on a friend of mine, his property out in the Paradise Valley, Montana, as his godfather was beginning to decline from Parkinson's. And he had been informed that he was going to be inheriting this property. And I was like, great, that's a great opportunity for, if you want to get a bunch of our friends out here to live together.
Yeah.
But his godfather had the same idea, child of the 70s, the community boom. And so he'd gathered all of the material things to do that, but didn't have the social component. And so it was just this accumulation of stuff. And I talked about living there, like living in the bardo, the place between life and death, because there was all of this baggage from this guy's life that he didn't have the support to process through. And so I was living there in an RV by myself and doing what I could by myself. But on an energetic level, I'd go up every sunset and sing on top of the hill and sing to the land. And I had to leave because it wasn't ready. It wasn't ready to take the next step. But then after I left, my friend was like, okay, I'm talking with my neighbor, and a bunch of the broken down machines, we're going to get those pulled out, and we're going to have work parties. And so it catalyzed motion. And so, that's that liminal in between one thing and another, where I was able to show up and help it move from this stuck place.
Yeah.
And from there, I went to another community that had been a rehab farm for vets. And through COVID, they realized how burnt out they were, and they wanted to shift to the healers living there rather than those needing healed living there. But they weren't quite there.
Oh.
And they didn't quite have the owners themselves. Ownership in a community is its own difficult quality to navigate.
Yeah.
But they were still working on their own healing, and so they weren't able to hold the healers, because the healers would come and say, okay, but before we start healing people that want to come in, we need to heal what's going on here.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of hard conversations around that. It's different now, and I don't think that it's attracting the same type of people in their healing journey who are ready to be hosting people to do healing work. And they have taken a step back to be more in line with where they are too.
Yeah.
And it sucks if you're like in a certain place in your healing journey and it's hard for you to like look in your shadows because there's so much, right? Veterans and, children of abuse, and you've been spending all this time helping other people and accumulating trauma on the land. And then people are coming in and going, you got to look at your stuff, guys. We're going to if you want to do it the way that you want to do it, we're all going to go sit in the cave. And they're like, I'll drown. I'll never come out. And that's not fun for anybody, because everybody's going kicking and screaming. And then the last one in this progression, because that experience for me cracked open the conception of community, that communities are wherever we are. And I personally don't have to go live with a bunch of strangers and do all of the heavy lifting to build foundational relationships, because I grew up in such a beautiful, intimate, close community with the Sufis. And also, by nature of my parents, there are communities wherever they've gone. And so I spent last summer in Bismarck, North Dakota, helping a dear family friend of my mom's. He was her former husband's best friend, and his wife had died a couple years prior, and her stuff was still in the house. Like, she'd been writing a book about this very prolific artist, and the filing cabinets were still in the living room, and her her clothes were still in the closet. It's 2 years, him by himself. She was still so present and alive in the house and taking up so much space. And so part of what I went to do was help clear out what he was ready to clear out. And so we moved those filing cabinets into their own space in the basement, and reached out to whoever needed to be reached out to get all of her super fancy clothes off to consignment stores. And all of these things, moving books and clearing computers and just letting him expand a little and move on and become freer from the very physical cage that her material remains had created in his life.
Yeah. So I have a question about that, though. So did he reach out to you to ask you if you could come help?
Yeah. It was.
You did. Okay.
It was through the through my mom and
the community.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that it was 2 years and he was still having struggling to make that move with her energy, right? So part of me is it's okay to take as long as you need. And then there's a very real aspect that sometimes it handicaps your life because you're still trying to lift up the energy, that spirit of somebody who's gone from the physical realm, right? So I just think it's really interesting. It is important work. And I want people listening to this to understand everything has its own timeline, and sometimes you do need to have help processing and witnessing this shift. It's a big one.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And
I'm
go ahead, Wakil.
Oh, I was just thinking, I'm kind of looking at our list here, and I'm thinking about how the through line, as you said earlier, is this willingness to be there, be present, and try to kind of guide assist anyway, communities, people in this, because the question we usually ask about your role in your work, but I think that I can just see that work that you've taken on, or that you've become, what you've become is this person who's willing to go in and look at what's real, what's really going on, and try to open things up for people, help things process, help things get done. And I appreciate too that what you said last about, at some point, I don't have to keep doing this for strangers. I have a community already, and we do have a community. We all have these communities around us, and just being, and that kind of sense, and that important recognition that we are in community all the time, and that work that you're talking about is always needed. That's right. That ability to be present and to think about, what can I do today to help the community around me grow, be stronger, be more connected. So, yeah.
Well, and it's like you're offering pastoral care, right? Like, I feel like it really is. Like, I think about it because I'm sensitive to the needs of strangers who are still my kin on a spiritual level. And so, my kids always say, God, Mom, everybody always just like comes up to you and tells you all this stuff, and you always end up helping people. And, there's like a little bit of they want to shut me down because it's like you spend so much energy with strangers. And on the other hand, it's like, I'm sensitive, spirit's calling me to like bear witness to everything. And when I can be of support, I can be of support. I can also say no and call somebody else in. But I get the sense that you're also, that this is the work, the life work of bearing witness, being sensitive to the needs, and saying, hey, I can show up and be of support to you.
Right.
Yeah. And knowing the boundaries to say, yeah, okay, I'm kind of done now.
And that's the kicker. That is the kicker.
That's the kicker.
And my biggest work internally and with myself, and I was just thinking about this the other day as my fiery self came in and was like, I'm out of gas. I'm giving too much. I'm not getting enough back. My gas tank is empty. Get the heck out of my life. Everything. But
been there.
As that passed and softened and that part of me died for the moment, I was able to go, part of what I'm working on is how to be in service and have boundaries. And I think that speaks to the resourcing question, that it is really critical. And it's part of the work that I've started doing externally too, more casually, just with friends. And I do have a natural sort of, like you're saying, like pastoral or ministerial care. My dad is a reverend in the Unity Church. My mom's in the Sufi. It's in my blood. And I was raised around it. But being in service and showing up for people in whatever way I can, but encouraging every single person to really get intentional about the boundaries that we set.
Yeah.
And that's part of the trickster archetype as well, is breaking down and setting up, reforming, renegotiating where boundaries are. Yeah. And so if the boundaries aren't working for you, if the container that you have created cannot contain what you're trying to do, if it's too big and it's not getting full enough, reform it and make it smaller or make it bigger or go ahead.
Or ask for help, right? Because as I'm listening to you, I struggle with the same piece as like, boundaries. And people are always like, you just don't have boundaries. Well, part of it is like training, like, you just get formative years. You're supposed to be of service. But what I hear too from you, and I want to bring this back to the death and dying component. We always talk about bearing witness to people's grief, to bearing witness to the dying process that might be occurring, whether it be like dying to the essence of the person by removing their clothes from the closet, or literally sitting with somebody who is emaciated and ready to go, to the other side. But in moment to moment, again, we could be like, I'm so called to this, I'm ready to go. And then suddenly you get that feeling like, oh God, I just really am, it's just too much, it's too heavy. Recognizing those very subtle moments and just being like, I am still here with you, and I really would like to have somebody else join me. Or I'm still here with you and I hear you. Let's take a moment and like, let's regroup. Because I think that as pastoral care kind of folks, especially around death and dying, it is a slippery slope to like feel that nuance when it's a little too much for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I'm like, because I know it doesn't happen a lot with like, I'm not going to say anything like that, but sometimes I need help. Sometimes I need a breath, and people might be in front of you really needing a lot. And suddenly it's like, whoa, it's a little much for me.
Right.
So yes. So understanding that nuance of boundaries, and it's okay because it's going to be okay. You know,
Right.
you just have to recognize it.
Yeah.
And so much of this stuff, I mean, we're stepping into a support role because these things are too big for one person. And that includes us too. It can be way too big for us.
Right.
You know, like
forget that though.
So much because we are so we're not enculturated to view each other as resource. To like, there's this idea that we have to do it alone, and that's the ideal. That the goal is to be a totally self-contained being, which but also we are interconnected and we are interdependent. Like, maybe one of the only things that I would be comfortable pegging as human nature is that we are social, and that we have gotten where we are together.
Right. Well, and Sam, the other part of that is we've been cultured to think that once you study or certify or get ordained or whatever, right, that is the only thing that you can do and nobody else can do it. Like I can hold space, I can hold sacred space, I could death midwife you, I could spiritual direct you, but so can you.
Yeah.
And you. Like, join me. Let me just like tell you what we're going to be doing. And just like it's almost like this, like, you know, two cells, we become one. And now we're like really supporting that other person who's before us. Right. But but people always like, oh, I can't do that. I'm not trained. I mean, there's truth to that too. But if we're going to live as an interconnected organism, helping each other in these moments, then like inviting others who don't have that signifier, it still means that they can be there to support. Right. Like, you don't have to say, well, I can't do that because I'm not ordained. Like, yes, you can. Come hold my hand. It's okay.
I was editing an episode yesterday, with the grief book, little libraries. And she was talking about the lady in her church who just shows up to people's doors when they're grieving and does their laundry.
Yes.
Like, that's the kind of stuff.
Exactly.
That it takes.
We could all show up.
We can all show up, and we all have unique gifts to show up with. And like we were talking, you know, go to your community, meet your neighbors. What do your neighbors need? That was another one of the most amazing things I learned in my time with my uncle. Is he'd been in his house for 30 years and knew his neighbors. And, you know, one day the neighbor needed a stump burned out from their yard, and so we spent the day sitting in their yard watching a fire.
I love it.
And we could get down all the roads of like the roadblocks with that, where, you know, housing insecurity and things like that interrupt our ability to build lasting relationships. Because if you don't know that, you know, that you're going to live in the same place next year, what's the point in meeting your neighbors?
Yeah.
But
I think there's an essence of, or an aspect of trust and faith there too, to have the faith that other people, that everybody around you is capable in one way or another of being support for you, and opening up to that, being willing to open to that, and kind of give in to that, or let go to that reality. Well, this is so fun. We're having a great time. Anyway, so I think one of the things we always like to ask, I think is important to kind of understand too, is what kind of challenges, or both things, like what kind of challenges you face, and then how you support yourself, how you care for yourself. So those are always good questions to get to. And I don't want to interrupt the flow either. This is an amazing conversation. So, but those are things we could talk about.
Containers, right? We are in a container in this episode. And so the questions help create that container, because we could just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk.
Which is all fine too.
Which is great too. It's lovely. It's a different kind of container.
Yeah.
So the question is, what are the challenges I face, and how do I sort of support myself? That is such a good question right now, because I'm asking myself those questions every day. And there are a lot of challenges. A lot of it, I think, for me, is getting out of my own way. I grew up coping by becoming small to be safe. And so embracing my gifts and acknowledging them and allowing them to be seen and showing up in the fullness can sometimes be a challenge. And there are a lot of inner voices that fight that. And then on a material level, how do I say this? Well, my mom often says that I'm made for the next world, not for this one. as a liminal trickstery person.
Yeah.
And so things like, and you've had this conversation with so many people on this show, money is the bane of my existence. I've done a really good job, and I am eminently lucky to have been able to find a way to walk in the world interacting with that minimally. My primary currency is relationship and service and connection. So that works great a lot of the time. And then sometimes the reality of the economic world that we live in, especially right now, hits like a train. And the cultural narrative that we live under, that money is how we do life, can get really, really overwhelming.
Yeah.
I've gotten a lot of great feedback and encouragement from you included, Wakil, to further develop these skills that I'm already practicing uncertified as a spiritual counselor and a pastoral, to go, I'm in the process of looking into going back to grad school for my master's in divinity and becoming ordained as a chaplain. And that's expensive. That's so expensive, especially to go to the really cool school down in San Francisco. Like, oh my gosh. And so the work there is to figure out how to leverage my gifts as a community-oriented person who has spent a lifetime building relationship. And say, like, hey, community, is there room even now, or especially now, that you can come together and help me do this?
Yeah.
Because the non-monetary benefit of more people who can tend to the souls of our communities, the better. And I think that's maybe one of the things I would add to the totally non-exhaustive list that you read at the beginning. Soul tending is really the name of the game for me. Whether it's clearing out coats, whether it's where I live now, there was an area under the barn that had just filled up with cardboard boxes, and so there was a path that was blocked. And so there was, it's feng shui, it's acupuncture, it's, but on a land scale. And so this building had a blocked energy channel. And even just clearing enough that there's a small path to walk, cleared that channel, and everything relaxed. Everything shifted and could flow better. And you can do that. People, relationships, land, buildings, rooms, because everything's alive and everything has a spirit. Back to that animacy, that animism. Where do you shoes want to be in your house?
Right. Yeah. I mean, my feeling when I hear you talk about that is, that is the chaplaincy master's degree. It is very expensive, and there's a level at which you don't need any of that. You're already doing this work. And like Ana Luisa was saying earlier, we have this sense that, we can't do it because we haven't got the certificates on the wall, right? But on the other hand, Ana Luisa and I are both the kind of people who've always done this work. And I think at some point we went to this process of school, but because we thought maybe that, I don't know why we thought that was going to do.
Legitimacy or something, right?
Yeah.
Well, the reason I went was because I wanted to learn the protocols, right?
Right.
And I remember even my ex-husband was like, "You've been doing this forever. I'm not sure why you're going back to school." And I was like, wow. But I have to say, I think that there is a place for people to not have to go back and do the whole, it's a capitalist grind at the end of the day to do this. And what we're choosing to study is not going to be financially like abundant for
Right.
us. It is a thing of love for us, right?
Right.
But that said, I mean, and I know that Sam, you walk in community with elders. You walk with Wakil. Like, I think there is a place for training in a very like subtle and intimate way with somebody who is on the path, and being open to being checked. Like, think about this. Being with a spiritual director. I think there's so many ways to do this without having to become so financially strangled. Is what
Right.
happens. Like, it was really hard.
Still is, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it still is.
Yeah. And Ana Luisa went through all that, and she's not getting rich from
Right.
this.
Right.
It's not happening,
Yeah.
And that's true for many people. I don't know. Actually, most of the people from our cohort that I've talked to are not. The only reason that I'm not getting any financial reward from it either. Really, I mean,
Right.
seriously, So, but I have this. But I agree. What did help me was the sense of really connecting and learning more about process and protocol and mostly, really, I'll say mostly the thing that I got most out of that was the ongoing connection to my cohort.
Community.
Yeah, to the community.
Yeah.
And that's probably the most important thing I got out of it, much more than how to do it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. We could talk, Sam, but I do want to encourage. I mean, spirit is spirit,
Right.
and spirit calls every single human to connect, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And it's capitalism that tells us to. Well, before even capitalism, it was like, trying to keep others in service to you, patriarchy or, whatever.
Right.
I have the information. You're not privy to it.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to stop being hierarchical in our belief system, then let's share the wealth of knowledge.
Yes.
Right.
Let's also have, the humility to hear when somebody's like, think about what you're doing. This might be a little like, could endanger both your spirit and that other person's spirit.
Right.
And, sometimes people like flare up and be like, well, I know what I'm doing. Like, I understand. But, it's about not creating more trauma to our spirits. At the end of the day, that's where I stand. Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to take care of myself, and I need you to be safe too. So, Sam, join the pastoral group.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm here.
I invite you in.
Thank you.
You're in it.
You've been doing it.
It's so funny that keeps happening. When I was initiated into the Sufi Ruhaniyat, my initiator, who is a very non-hierarchical, self-described, like anarchist, old school, like theoretical, political, cogent theory anarchist, he was like, I'm not going to give you a name. I'm not going to do that. And that was an interesting walk because the name gives a certain level of legitimacy within the community hierarchy. And so I walked in the community without a name, which is a really interesting liminal place to be. But there was not necessarily causal difficulty of breaking boundaries in a way that like ejected me from the community for a little while, because I pushed on some buttons that were really tender.
Yeah.
And that's another story, maybe another conversation.
Yes.
Around the learning process of how to navigate boundaries, liminal spaces, and transformation in a way that doesn't burn everything down around you.
Yeah.
Which is a big practice, because I have a lot of that like fire when I see things that aren't working, and the justice part. If I see injustice or unfairness, I'm like, nope, that's not a good container. Let's break it and make a new one. But how to do that more gently and kindly, and Anyway, over the years, the name came on its own, and just this last year, I got to visit with that teacher, with that initiator friend on the path. And I was finally at a place where I was like, hey, I've been sitting with this. This came on its own. And he was like, yeah, that's how it should be. Yep. That's your name. You're in it. And I was like, oh, great. Okay. So So this feels similar of like, yeah, you're already here,
Yeah, exactly.
I think the piece with schooling, right, is that it's just a different avenue. The path is the path, the stream is the stream, and our gifts are our gifts. And it's the different ways that we develop them and different containers of learning, of development, fit us differently and form us differently.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of maybe the appeal of school is there are skills that I would love to learn that I think would really thrive and develop in that setting, but that
Right.
could
Yeah.
also thrive and develop in a mentorship setting. It's
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
I'm going to just also point out that, and this is, I want to also encapsulate this in the, death doula, death midwifery, home funeral kind of placement, because I think right now everything is getting out there, like take the doula, death doula, certification, 400 hours, $5,000, and you can go out and hang a shingle. And, so I honor that many people have established these learning places for people who really need that kind of pedagogy.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And it is important. Not everybody's the same kind of learner.
Right.
I was just talking to a friend of mine who spends time with this group of people, and they all are working on counseling skills in situ as a community. And so they go together to learn how to be a counselor in this cohort on their
Amazing.
own.
Amazing.
They're not taking classes. I don't remember them if there's any kind of hard currency that is exchanged, but they meet like once a month. It's a 3-hour and sit down. There's always like somebody who leads, who's trying to, help the learning. And I thought about that. I recognize that as a really community oriented, supportive learning space, right?
Yeah.
And now we're taking it away from like, I have to work and get a loan and try to make it and, do the books, whatever. This was, I was like, this is how death midwifery would work really well with us. Like herbalism would work. Like I studied herbalism, right? Like I would love to just like share, I want to share my knowledge. So I invite you and any listener who are curious about this work and believe that they have like something calling to them, I encourage you to go and look for different, pathways to seeing this, because it's not just about paying for the thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's that sounds like the idea of gift economy, that we can share in community. We can get together, we can share what we know and help each other learn more and be more present for what's needed right now. I love that. That's beautiful. We should create one of those.
Yeah.
We should.
Yes.
Like,
absolutely.
I know people who have talked about this with me, so it's already back there somewhere simmering.
Okay.
And then in that and building oh my gosh, we're talking like so in my
I know. Wait a second.
another one of my passion places is how do we build the next world inside the shell, the dying shell of this one, because the systems that we've been living under are dying. We are watching it in real time around us. And
I hope so.
God, I hope so.
I'm like,
I mean, it's becoming something.
Death midwife, death.
Right. It's becoming something else. Whether it's whether it serves humanity better or not is up to all of us. But as we build this new self inside, right, the molting crab, the molting exoskeleton, becoming the next butterfly, whatever that metaphor is, how do we build into those systems that everybody gets food on the table and still has a roof over their head and has childcare? How do we do those things when those have become so tied with the monetary system and are used to keep us locked into that?
Yeah, exactly.
How do we give of ourselves in a way that all of our basic needs are met and we actually like build and grow stability and security together?
Yeah.
All right.
Beautiful.
Well, I'm gonna rock your world one last time here, but
do it.
I was just listening to a podcast yesterday, and it is about this researcher who studied some moths or butterflies, I can't remember, but her studies showed that after 5 weeks of being in the chrysalis, they emerged and could still remember the experiences from before, which has blown so many of the scientific world away, right?
Talk about cellular memory, because the other part of that, the other part of that is that in the chrysalis, at least for butterflies, they completely dissolve. They are nothing but like a pocket of goo for a while. That decentralized,
and the fact that they remember.
Right.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Amazing.
So going back to what you said about creating while we're still in our own chrysalis as a humanity, right?
Yeah.
It's our dream time. We have to remember those dreams of when we had that actually happening to us, when we could feed our families, when we could have community, when the touch of each other was so readily available, where we weren't feeling like there was scarcity, right? And so as we begin to emerge, I hope that all of us can remember those poignant moments of humanity and bring it into the next, into our.
Yes.
It's reminding me of two books that we did, or one book that we did in our Sufi book club for a while was one that really, I think, rocked our world then. It was called Hospicing Modernity. And amazing kind of like just what you're talking about. This where the culture that we live in is unsustainable and is collapsing around us. So how do we hospice that into something that's a different kind of way? And then Serviceberry by Robin Wall Kimmerer speaks a lot to this gift economy and how we and what we could create by remembering the indigenous way of caring for each other and for being in community. So, I think we're all talking about that same kind of hope and prayer and work to get to that point.
To bring it back to the symbolic death, and we've just been talking about, hospicing modernity and things like that, and the returning and remembering those indigenous life ways, those land-based, community-based, integrated life ways is one of the other streams of my work. And I can plug, I did a podcast about it for a little while. I have 5 episodes 2 years ago.
Great. We'll put it in the podcast notes.
We'll put it in the notes. That in the indigenous revival, especially European, which is where I focus. I grew up very close to indigenous American cultures and people and community. And through my life, like the question of how do you listen and learn from that without appropriating and with acknowledging that we as Euro-descendant people also have that in our lineages. It's further back, and there's been, like, not in an oppression Olympics way, a longer legacy of intentional destruction of those life ways. The colonial and evangelical processes started in Europe to subjugate the indigenous cultures there. And the fragments we have of those containers are much more sparse. And we can get into, this happens in any indigenous culture rocked, cracked, shattered by the colonial modernity project, capitalist project, whatever you want to call it. And because we've all been shaped by that force, those containers don't exist anymore in the same way, and they can't contain the world. And so we can take the shards of that pot that we can find and incorporate them into the new container we make for the world going forward. And so rather than playing purity games about what is authentically Norse this, what is like authentically blah, 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 like we can try to understand them on an authentic level, but we can't recreate that because it doesn't exist anymore. The world of
we're quilting. We're taking the little pieces of all these and quilting.
Yes, quilting.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that metaphor.
Yeah.
To create a blanket, to create the next one, and as many
a new one.
many of those pieces as we can incorporate and remember and reclaim and build together, the better. I think the more resilient that container is going to be.
Yeah, the organization.
Gorgeous, maybe so.
Yeah, maybe so. The organization the author of Hospicing Modernity created is called Decolonializing the Future. So I'll send you some links to that. Really fascinating. I'm really loving it. Anyway, we should try to finish this up. Is there anything that we haven't gotten into that we should?
Lots.
There's a lot, yeah. I guess, is there any, I guess just really quickly, do you have any fear of death and anything else that you wish we'd have talked about?
Oh, fears of death. Not really. Death is just another step in the journey. It's just another threshold that we cross. I'm curious to see what's on the other side, whether it's me or not, whether I'm a coherent, whether I'm a coherent me there or not. There's a lot of stuff to be afraid of, and I certainly have a fair amount of that. But I fear that we won't get our stuff together to show up for each other way more than death. I guess maybe that's a fear of death is a fear of mass death, a fear of as who was it that said, was it Gabor Mate or someone said, I'm less concerned with, it was something about, I mourn for all of the Einsteins that have died due to negligence or war or genocide, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And so not on a personal level, but
Great.
on a global.
I love that idea of, will we remember, or will we remember the caterpillar, basically? If we go back to that earlier thing.
Will we remember in time? Will we remember in time?
And will we communicate? Will we still have communications going on like we had the one, you just edited that one, I think, the one person who was talking about communicating beyond the veil. Well, wonderful. We should finish up. And Sam, you're going to have a really big job on this one. And luckily, you get to edit yourself. So it's your own fault.
Dude, sound bites.
Right. So, do you want to read the poem, or you want one of us to?
Yeah, I'll read it.
Okay.
This is Die Before You Die by our beloved friend Rumi. O generous ones, die before you die, even as I have died before death, and brought this reminder from beyond. Become the resurrection of the spirit, so you may experience the resurrection. This becoming is necessary for seeing and knowing the real nature of anything. Until you become it, you will not know it completely, whether it be light or darkness. If you become reason, you will know reason perfectly. If you become love, you will know love's flaming wick.
Yeah. Wow, thank you.
Yes.
That's so beautiful. A good reminder. We have a choice.
It is. I was like, I haven't read this for a while. So yes, it was a reminder.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, Sam. So glad we got to do this. And
Thank you, Sam. Thanks so much for joining us on the End of Life Conversations. We appreciate you and look forward to sharing our stories. We encourage you to subscribe to have access to premium episodes and extra resources. Links to our guests and their recommendations and a transcript of this episode will be in the podcast notes.
Yes, thank you so much. And please tell all your friends. Follow us on social media, and again, consider subscribing for some excellent premium content. We want to acknowledge that the music we are using was composed and produced by Charles Heastand. We also want to acknowledge that we live on unceded lands that have been cared for thousands of years by indigenous peoples who are still here.